option where 15 people can travel in one limousine together. This is the ultimate limousine.
And they realize that yes, there's a possibility that this could happen to me. And I believe the reason the students are here is to learn the safe way to drive a motorcycle.
Motoring 91 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil.
The jet airliner, the fastest and most convenient way to travel this planet of ours. But it's also the most expensive. And when times are tough, the airline business can suffer as consumers try and find alternative ways to travel. Well, one of the fastest growing alternatives just happens to be one of the oldest ways of getting from A to B, the bus. But as we're about to see, riding the bus ain't like it used to be. The bus has been around for almost as long as the wheel itself. For most, it's an economical form of transportation, the cheapest way from point A to B. In the past decade, rock stars touring the country have opted for bus travel, transforming the coach into a luxurious home on wheels. Now the business community has discovered the bus as an alternative to long lines at the airport and flight delays.
I've really grown up in the bus industry, and I've seen a tremendous amount of change in the last 10 years, where now you have buses on the market now that are equipped with videos, full washrooms, or an ultimate executive coach like this one, where you have a mobile office on wheels. There's cellular phone, fax machine, VCR, capable of hold board meetings or presentations right on board this bus. What we're in, essentially, is a regular Greyhound bus, if you will. The shell, the powertrain, we buy these vehicles brand new from the factory before they put the row seats in. It's Canadian built in Winnipeg, Manitoba. From there we send them to Columbus, Ohio, where the interior is fitted to the executive coach.
What's a bus worth like this compared to a regular coach bus?
You're probably looking at about $100,000 difference in the conversion.
And what's the price of a bus?
A regular highway coach now is anywhere from $280,000 to $350,000, depending on the options. So you're looking at an executive coach, as this one is, you're looking at an investment of over $400,000. We're trying to promote the bus industry as an alternative to businesses to flying, to cut their cost in business travel. Just think of the cost of flying 15 executives from Toronto to Ottawa. We're trying to promote the coach as an alternative, where 15 people could come out of an office, step onto a bus much like this, and continue their meeting and travel right to Ottawa. Whereas all time is spent is productive time. A company could utilize this coach going from Toronto to Ottawa in 4.5 hours. And if you consider the downtime getting to and from Toronto International Airport and then to your destination, renting cars, when you consider the door-to-door advantage of the bus, we can compete with the airlines within a 250-mile radius. I'd say the majority of our business comes from large corporations. A coach like this would be used by a corporation to pick up a board of directors off a private airplane and bring them to a meeting, or perhaps a sales presentation to 10 of their top clients. The sales presentation can be done en route to their plant or en route to the new project that they're trying to promote. A small part of our business comes from the limousine industry, where perhaps when people wanted to rent 2 or 3 limos to transport 15 people for a night on the town or to the theater, now they have an option where 15 people can travel in one limousine together. This is the ultimate limousine.
I want to rent one of your executive buses. What's it going to cost me?
Basically, it's $900 for an 8-hour day, and that gives you the coach and the driver for an executive coach like this. Of course, that doesn't include any catering or hostess service. Anything like that would be above $900. I think the attitudes have changed a lot, although still people in the back of their minds, when they think of a bus, if you haven't been on one for 10 years, there's been a great change in the industry. Buses are more spacious now, more window area. Most highway coaches now are equipped with video systems where people can enjoy a movie, even on some of the major routes between Toronto, Montreal, Toronto, and Sudbury. If you haven't been on a bus in the last 5 or 10 years, you're in for a pleasant surprise. I feel the industry's came a long way.
The Grand Marquis is worthy of note for a couple of important reasons. Firstly, it is one of the few cars under $30,000 to offer both an airbag and anti-lock brakes, both highly desirable safety items.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
This week we look at a car that made the North American automobile industry what it is today. This is the 1992 Mercury Grand Marquis. Now, while in many respects it's traditional as it ever was, it does feature a lot of the safety features that many people look for in today's vehicles. On the skid pad, the Marquis handled the pylon test surprisingly well. While there was some body roll and a titch of oversteer at times, neither became a major concern. During the brake test, the four-wheel disc brake setup, complete with an anti-lock feature, hauled the car to a halt in just 121 feet. There was little brake pedal pulsation when the ABS system was activated, and the amount of dive under heavy braking did not create any significant problems. In the acceleration test, the engine pulled well throughout the rev range. The available power is, however, best appreciated in the 60 to 100 km/h area rather than off the line. For those interested, when properly equipped, the Grand Marquis can pull a 5,000-pound trailer, making this vehicle a good buy if you have a heavier boat or trailer to haul. One of the things the Grand Marquis does boast is the largest trunk capacity in its class. Now, a point has to be made here. Because of the width of the bumper and the very deep nature of the trunk, lifting heavy items out of the back of the trunk is awkward. You've got to watch your back. If you're not careful, you're going to strain it. Inside, the Marquis offers enough room for 6 adults to ride in comfort. Even when the front seats are fully back, there is still ample legroom in the rear. From the driver's perspective, all controls are well placed and easily operated. This holds true from the power window controls on the left through the hub-mounted cruise controls to the centrally mounted heater and radio controls. For once, given the number of power options, the number of buttons has been kept to a minimum. The instrument cluster is of the analog type, and while it offers limited information, it is easy to read and interpret at a glance. This is Ford's new 4.6-litre modular overhead cam V8 engine. Now, two things about this engine are very desirable. First of all, although the engine is smaller, it actually produces 40 more horsepower than last year's 5-litre V8. Secondly, you get better fuel consumption. Now, that by anybody's standards is like having your cake and eating it. Ford call their engine a modular engine. This means the engine can be manufactured as a V6 or V8 in sizes ranging from a 3-litre to a 4.6-litre found in our test car. The power production for the 4.6-litre engine is 190 horses and 260 foot-pounds of torque. On the road, this translates to very crisp performance, prompt throttle response, and very good passing power. Matched with this new engine is a 4-speed automatic overdrive with a lock-up converter. The Grand Marquis is worthy of note for a couple of important reasons. Firstly, it is one of the few cars under $30,000 to offer both an airbag and anti-lock brakes, both highly desirable safety items. Secondly, it is the only car under $30,000 to feature a traction control system. The traction assist, as Ford call it, is an extension of the anti-lock brake system. If the system detects wheel spin upon acceleration, it rapidly applies and releases the rear brakes to keep the traction loss to a minimum. This on a rear-drive car in winter is a definite asset. My pet peeve on the Grand Marquis has to do with the power antenna button on the dash. Specifically, every time you park the car, you have to use it to lower the antenna. If you don't, you're going to find yourself with a very large bill for replacing these things, and they don't come cheap. Anyway, now to the scoreboard for a rundown on the 1992 Mercury Grand Marquis. The new 4.6-litre overhead cam V8 works very well. The increased horsepower and performance gives 0 to 100k times of just under 10 seconds, as well as better than average passing power. Despite the heavy bias towards comfort rather than handling, the big Mercury fared reasonably well in the pylon test. The soft suspension never felt mushy, nor did it wallow too much. The power steering, despite being of the variable assist type, limits the feedback and offers rather vague on-center feel. The four-wheel disc brakes, complete with an anti-lock feature, provide quick straight stops, averaging 121 feet from 80 kilometers an hour. While there is a fair amount of nosedive at the threshold, it does not create any great concern. With the exception of a fair amount of wind noise, the Marquis offers a very high degree of comfort. The suspension absorbs all but the largest of bumps, and the seats provide plenty of support and comfort. During the test, we recorded a reasonable fuel economy of 12 litres per 100 kilometres, or 23.5 miles per gallon. Still a little thirsty, but not unreasonable for a car that tips the scales at over 3,700 pounds. Don't tell Ford you shouldn't fix it if it ain't broke. The all-new 1992 Grand Marquis is a definite improvement over its predecessor. The increased power, contemporary styling, and airbag and anti-lock brakes make this car highly desirable, traditionalist or not.
You're looking at a Detroit diesel. Hang on. There, now you can hear me. Now this is a Detroit diesel. It's only 6-cylinder, but it's the heart and soul of today's buses. It's got over 500 cubic inches and it's packing over 300 horsepower. And how'd you like to try and change this fan belt? Well, guess what? I've got just the guy that can do it. And of course, I'm talking about our mechanic, Bill Gardner. And this week, Bill tells us he's been watching cops and robbers on television, and he's got a beef he'd like to air.
I used to watch a lot of cop and private eye shows, Brad, and the one thing that used to really bug me was when the Fords and the Chevys started to the sound of a Chrysler starter. And each particular brand has its own distinctive sound to the starter. Now, the only sound that the average motorist is probably going to associate with a starter problem is going to be a click or no sound at all. But there are a few things, telltale signs that a starter may make. For example, in the wintertime, if you just get a little whir or a whine sound when you go to crank your car and the engine doesn't crank over, you've probably got a bad starter drive. And that's a separate part inside most starters that can be replaced fairly easily. Now, if you get an awful clashing or grinding sound, you may have a damaged flywheel, and that might have happened as a result of a starter problem. Now, when you're starting your car, you want to listen and not over crank this thing. You want to hear that the engine has fired and released quickly. Also, you don't want to over crank it no more than 15 seconds at any one time, or you'll overheat it and you'll puddle some of the solder in this starter and cause it to melt down and be damaged. So if your car has a starting problem, rest it every no more than 15 seconds of cranking, followed by at least several minutes to cool down. If your car isn't starting readily, that's something that you want to address too. Have it properly tuned so that it starts easily. And for heaven's sakes, don't leave those cars running to save wear and tear on a starter. Shut them off. It's a terrible waste of resources and pollution to leave cars idling thinking that you're saving wear and tear on the starter. Shut it off. If your engine's tuned properly, you just touch the key and that thing will just fire up just like that. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 91.
Hey, Brad, you're on. Sorry about that. Gotta go. You gotta go. And I'll tell you, on these executive buses, it's like being at home. They even got a shower in there. Well, as you can tell, here on Motoring, we deal with anything on a set of wheels, and that includes motorcycles. And that's the subject of our next report. And believe me, this story should be an inspiration to all of us, whether we ride a motorcycle or not. Here's Steve Grant.
Motorcycle sidecars are not something we see every day, but when we do see them, they're usually attached to police motorcycles. That's because they're great for balance and they can extend the patrolling season well into the winter months. But motorcycle sidecars also serve to open a door for a large section of our population that would normally never experience the thrill of riding a motorcycle.
Well, it's kind of funny to see me on a bike again, but that's how I got into the wheelchair. In 1972, I made one wrong turn, went through the ditch, hit a post on the other side, and woke up in the hospital with a broken back. My accident was a relatively severe one because I ended up in a wheelchair, but for the same reason, if you were to trip and fall, does that mean you can't get up on your feet again? You have to. Biking is something I really enjoy doing, and there's really no reason why I can't do it now.
If his wheelchair wasn't strapped to the side of his bike, you would never know that Tom Proszowski was disabled, and that's the way he prefers it. His goal is to share the exhilaration he gets out of driving with other wheelchair-bound thrill seekers.
I'm aware of maybe 6 disabled individuals in our province who ride, maybe 2 or 3 in Quebec. And I read some stories from guys in the States who also ride, but it's a relatively small number. I am doing my best to make sure that other people with disabilities are aware of the option. I have a certificate from a recognized course to teach other people how to ride bikes with sidecars. And I have tried that with 2 or 3 other disabled people, and a couple of them are already riding.
The sidecar provides the necessary balance, but beyond that, Tom Suzuki has very few modifications.
The rear brake was foot operated as any other bike would be. I moved that over to my left hand. So the left hand now operates both the clutch and the back brake. And front brake is of course where it was. And the shifter, all I've done for the shifter is attached a wooden dowel, a stick, to the normal shifter lever, which extends between the tank and my leg, and I just pull and push on that to shift gears. Unfortunately, I have to let go of the handlebars to affect the shifting, but it can be done, and relatively safely. I've been driving for over 5 years now without any problem that way.
Unfortunately, it took a very serious accident for Tom to fully appreciate the importance of safety and motorcycles. But now he has the chance to share his experience with others. This community college offers a motorcycle safety program for future riders. And one of the top instructors is Tom.
Good start up, lousy ride. Feet up on the pegs at all times, knees in the tank, eyes up, right? Well, through a mutual friend, I met the head instructor of the course, and he told me all the processes one needs to go through to get into it. And I guess no different than all the other instructors, I just felt that I really enjoy the sport, and I would like to put something back into the sport and make sure those new drivers or riders out there are doing it right. So perhaps the bottom line is that I don't want other people to get into the situation that I'm in because they didn't know how to get out of it. A lot of people have really bad habits of riding with 2 fingers on the levers. When you go for brakes or clutch, you go like that. Bad thing. Let's say you fall down. Aha! He just lost 2 fingers.
That's really good, Tom. We got that on film, too.
Not a good idea.
Safety, obviously, a prime concern of this course because you drill it into them and you drill it into them. When the students look at Tom and they can see what could happen when you're not paying attention or when someone else isn't paying attention, obviously it hits home when they take a look at him then.
Yeah, it does, and the students appreciate it more, you know, when they can see, and Tom explains to them what happened, and they realize that yes, there's a possibility that this could happen to me, and I believe the reason the students are here is to learn, you know, the safe way to drive a motorcycle. And this is where they start off, and they continue their career out on the road with safe driving habits. Tom, of course, you know, explaining to them what may happen.
I met Tom at the beginning of the year when we have our training, and it was a bit unusual to see a paraplegic wanting to join up for the instructor course. My first thought was, does this mean I have to do most of the work this weekend? As a matter of fact, it was almost impossible to keep up with Tom. He's enthusiastic, he's a good teacher, and I hope that he's an inspiration for other people who are also paraplegics to know that the sport of motorcycling is available for them also, and they can have a really good time with it.
Tom's dedication to the sport doesn't end with the weekend classes. On his spare time, he's tutoring Yvonne, a paraplegic and a first-time biker.
Yvonne started out as a passenger. I took her out for a ride one time. She lived in Sudbury at the time, so we took some back roads and went through the mountains and windy roads, and she really fell in love with the experience. So I suppose if you really enjoy being a passenger, the next step is, can I really ride myself? The answer to that is yeah, definitely. If someone has enough hand function to pull in the levers, and ability to transfer, I can teach them how to ride. If they can't transfer, there is also another type of a sidecar which can be purchased, and that allows you to stay in your wheelchair. It's not something that I'd like to do a hard sell on. However, if you are a disabled individual and you have an affinity for wind in your hair and a sense of freedom and a little bit of adventure, biking may just be the sport for you. And all I want to say is follow it up, because it can be done.
Are you having trouble staying awake? Then why are you driving? Pull over, get out of the car. But if you insist on endangering yourself and everyone else on the road, then maybe you need a doze alarm. Just clip it on your ear, and the minute you begin to nod off, a piercing sound jolts you awake. Great for long trips and late-night highway driving. The doze alarm is ideal for those who long for that hearing aid look. Remember the word responsibility, and keep in mind, coffee and fresh air are much cheaper.
This guy's been on this job for 15 years. This is my first day and I've already got a red hat. That's coming up next on Kenzie's Corner.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
Now, how many times have you seen this? A fire truck with its sirens screaming and lights looking like downtown Baghdad on a Saturday night, and the drivers all around him are completely oblivious to its presence. Well, it's a combination of people not paying attention and not knowing what it is they're supposed to do. Well, the law is pretty clear. You're supposed to keep as far to the right as you can and stop. Don't force the emergency vehicle driver to make assumptions about what you're trying to do. He's got a better view of the road than you have. He's also probably had more training in emergency driving avoidance than you have. Now, don't be silly about this. If you're in the left-hand lane of a 3-lane road, don't dive across 3 lanes of traffic right in front of the guy just to meet the letter of the law. Stay to the left, and if there's a median strip, pull onto that, and again, stop. Now, failure to detect approaching emergency vehicles is one of the reasons why driving with Walkman earphones on is illegal, at least in my home province of Ontario. By eliminating hearing from your sensory input, you're creating additional danger for yourself and for other people. Now, being able to see these guys coming is a byproduct of proper driving technique. Keep your eyes moving, looking straight ahead, from side to side, your rear view mirrors and your side view mirrors. Now, maybe the emergency vehicle behind you is just a cop on a midnight donut run, but the chances are it's a police car, an ambulance, or a fire truck on an emergency mission where a few seconds could make the difference between life and death. So keep your eyes and ears open, and please give these guys all the help you can. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Remember the days when you were a kid on those school charter trips and you got tired of talking to your friends? Who was the next best person to talk to? The driver. But of course, the teachers always said, don't bug the driver. Well, when you're on an executive bus, not only can you talk to your driver, you can do it sitting in a nice padded leather chair. Not bad. Well, that's it for now. We'll see you next time for more stories on buses and cars and motorcycles and the people who drive them. See you then.
Motoring 91 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil.